Press. Florence is back.
Hello,
Hi again,
Sarah.
Florence. We're going to begin with the Indian elections that have been attracting a lot of attention.
That's right. They kicked off yesterday. The Independent calls them the biggest election in history. That's on the front page of the Independent today. Over 800 million people are registered to vote over the next 5 weeks. So that's the front page of the Independent today. And inside, the Independent calls it a tidal wave of democracy. Now, the Guardian is also focusing on this today, focusing on one key group that could play a very important role in this election, and that's young people. India is a very young country. More than half of the population is under 24. So you can see here the title there, the country's young generation really holds the future in their hand. There's some 120 million first-time voters, so the stakes are really high. And to quote the article, it says that India's youth could be a demographic dividend, ensuring stability and prosperity for decades to come, or it could be a disaster, condemning the country to years of deep social tensions.
What about the reactions in the Indian press itself?
Well, let's take a look at the front page of the Hindustan Times. They talk about target 543. That's the number of seats in the lower house of the Indian parliament that candidates are battling for. India begins the epic chase. Now, inside, in its editorial, the Hindustan Times focuses on what could be a game changer in this election, and that's technology. There are close to 250 million internet users in India. And you can see here it says, to know is to empower. And this is especially true for young people and first-time voters because they're very avid social media users. And according to this article, a lot of parties have been really reaching out to voters online, campaigning online to try to reach more and more voters. This article says that technology is helping more people make better decisions about this election ever than before.
Now, this Indian election comes just after polls in Afghanistan, very different kind of election, not so much the world's biggest as the country's first democratic transfer of power.
That's right. There was a lot of focus on those elections over the weekend. The Daily Beast focuses on this today in an article, points out that some 7 million Afghans risked their lives to vote. That was a turnout about 58%. That's actually about the same turnout as in the presidential election in November 2012 in the U.S. So this article wonders, would you risk your life to vote? It points out that voter turnout in the U.S. is dropping. There's a growing feeling that voting is really meaningless. What does this say about our democracy? It's a very interesting article today in the Daily Beast.
Now, we're a lot of focus. We've been talking about it this morning, this increased tension over eastern Ukraine. The international press, of course, paying that a great deal of attention this morning.
That's right, throwing around the blame. Let's take a look at the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You can see protesters there waving Russian flags in Donetsk. So one of the 3 cities where there were these pro-Russian demonstrations. Now, here you can see the title. It says that Ukraine blames Russia for this unrest. But we can look at the flip side in Moscow Times, where it says that actually these protesters are calling on Russian peacekeepers to intervene in the country. This article points out that this really has triggered fears that a Crimean scenario could happen once again in Ukraine.
Also, space in the international press devoted to the 20th anniversary commemorations in Kigali of the genocide.
That's right. There's a photo of those commemorations on the front page of the International New York Times today. 20 years later, the international community has been drawing a lot of criticism for failing to act at the time. And there's a cartoon in the International New York Times that actually continues to criticize the UN. This is a cartoon by Chapat where you can see someone addressing a very empty UN General Assembly there saying, in memory of our role during the Rwandan genocide, we won't do anything.
And finally, staying with the New York Times, Flo, it focuses on former U.S. President George W. Bush and his artistic abilities, of all things.
That's right. It's no secret that George W. Bush is an avid painter. Now, he's currently showing off his paintings at the Presidential Center in Dallas. You can see one of his paintings there, a portrait of Hamid Karzai. The exhibition is called The Art of Leadership, a President's Personal Diplomacy. This is a very serious art review in the International New York Times today because it points out that people need to get a grip. Everyone is kind of freaking out because this is a George W. Bush painting, but this is a very serious review of his paintings. It says that the exhibition actually confirms his, quote, unsettling talent. Former President George Bush is something of a natural when it comes to making oil paintings, a decent amateur. It says that he has the uncanny ability to translate photographs into more awkward images. So it's a kind of a mixed review of his paintings. It's a very interesting article. It does point out, though, that it's hard to not focus on the bigger picture. A lot of people see his paintings as a lens to understanding his presidency, his legacy, and his character. But it's a very interesting article in the
George
International
W.
Times.
Bush, the artist, not just the president, but the artist as well. Florence Villamino, thank you very much indeed for having been with us today. A look there at the headlines in the international press this morning. It is 27 minutes past 9. A quick break now. I'll be back with the headlines in a couple of minutes. We'll also be getting this morning's focus. We'll be looking at the forgotten 2 million Hutus who fled Rwanda 20 years ago, just after the genocide. Our correspondents went to the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they continue to live, and met the militiamen, who are their self-proclaimed defenders.